Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Our goal is to make a positive impact in the dental field. I have been a dental assistant, a biller, an office manager, a scheduler, a hygienist, and a dental coach, which makes me your biggest fan. My husband was in the military and we traveled all over the United States. I had opportunities to work in many different practices, and I saw incredible practices and practices that had a lot of potential within them. Thank you for joining us. Let's dive into the podcast. Welcome back to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Today, we're diving into a powerful concept, the critical move, how one small focused action can create meaningful change in your practice, but also in your life. So let's start with the story. In West Virginia, one of the counties, they had an epidemic of obesity, the most overweight county in the state. And they had worked on different campaigns saying, get healthy. They had done school campaigns, billboards, commercials, and nothing was working. And they were feeling really frustrated. So they started to ask better questions. They started to ask, what's one thing we can help our people in our county to get healthier? Because get healthy was too broad. They needed to get more laser focused and make a critical move that would help people become healthier. So they started to ask, what's the one thing people run to the store the most? And they realized that the one thing people go to the store for the most is milk, and that people were tending to buy whole milk. Now, in this study, one thing I learned was that 3 pieces of bacon is saturated fat is equivalent to what you drink in whole milk. And they started focusing on educating their population on just making one small change. Instead of reaching for whole milk, reaching for 1% milk. And they educate their population when they first started this campaign is they showed a vial of fat. Now, I don't know if you've seen a vial of fat, but it's pretty gross. And visualization is so important. Seeing a visual really helps you decide on if you want to intake that in your body or not. And so they showed that fat. And they said, this is what you get when you drink whole milk. We encourage you to start purchasing 1% milk. And they also ran the same campaigns, but focusing on how buying 1% milk is healthier, that there's less fat, less than 3 strips of bacon as are in whole milk. And they started with those campaigns, and they used the same materials with schools, billboards, commercials, and they saw improvement. It doesn't mean that the county got healthier necessarily, because what they saw was people started to purchase 1% milk more. Sales before were at 18% for 1% milk, and they jumped up to 43%. So that's a big jump. And then 6 months later, they were around 36, 37% for 1% milk. Is what they did is they changed the habit. They changed the way people were consuming milk, because people will drink what's in the fridge. And it's kind of like, I think of toothpaste when you're on vacation. If you forgot your preferred toothpaste and there's toothpaste available to you where you're staying, you just use that because it's toothpaste and you just want to brush your teeth. It's kind of the same thing with milk. They just had to change their habit and have them reach for 1% instead of whole milk. And it had an impact getting them closer to being healthier. Now, how does this relate to your practice? Think about what is there that you could do where you can have growth in your practice by focusing, by making a critical move on one thing. Because too often we give big goals, like we want to reduce overhead, or we want to bring in a whole bunch more patients and increase the amount we produce. But let's be honest, that's really vague. We need to get down low and make one critical move. One practice we worked with, they felt that they were overextending on PPEs, on their gloves and their masks. And they were like, we want to keep using the quality of masks and gloves that we have, but we feel like there's a way to reduce it. So we talked about buying in bulk. We talked about checking other companies and seeing if they could get a better price. But then we also talked about what we could do to make sure we're not putting on gloves more than we need to. We spoke about having the room set up completely so that way the assistant or whoever's in the room, the hygienist, doesn't have to take off a glove and put on a new glove because they got into a drawer. And we also talked about when gloves fall on the floor. What do you do with that glove? Well, they're like, well, we throw them away. I'm like, well, what if we changed it and you put that glove in the sterilization room? And they were like, yeah, we'll put it in the sterilization room. We can use it when we clean the dirty trays. Perfect. It doesn't save you from thousands and thousands of gloves.
in a month period, but you can change it in a year period, saving you a box or 2 boxes and reducing that cost to your practice. Now, you can also use this for how can you help your patients have a better experience. Most patients don't want to spend more time in the dental chair. So there are things you can do to decrease the time the patient's in the dental chair. So be aware of this, that there are things you can do to help the patients have a better experience. Look at your practice and find one critical move and choose that move. Commit to it, measure it, adjust to it if needed. But having that critical move and giving that direction will enable your team and guide your team to where you want them to go. I like to think of it as the bus being like the practice owner and the people, and then the goal is the gas of where you want to go and having that goal and that direction. So getting everyone on the bus, this is where we want to go, and then the gas is applying that goal and getting people there. If you want people to change, you must provide a crystal clear direction. Give them something to aim for. And then often there's resistance. Be prepared that there may be some resistance with your team, but often some of the resistance is there's a lack of clarity. Be clear about what you need them to do. Focus on it daily, weekly. Don't do monthly. It's too long. We get back in our old habits. But measure and small moves and get you to those big results. So choose what is your critical move? Where do you want to go? How can you help your practice? Brainstorm with your team and get them on board to making that critical move to help your practice to be more successful. I'm your biggest fan. My goal is your success. Thanks for joining me.